Right. So today we are diving into, well, I guess you could say a classic, Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. We've got the book right here,
Yes.
ready to go. And I think this will be a fascinating look at beauty, morality, and the consequences, I guess, of a wish.
It's a story that goes really deep into, I think, the human psyche
Yeah.
and really kind of explores what happens when we become obsessed with youth and beauty.
Right. And it takes a dark turn. Let's just jump right in.
Okay.
The story opens, and we're introduced to Dorian Gray.
Yes.
This young man whose beauty is just legendary, really.
Yeah, he's described as having this face that would make a sculptor mad with envy.
Wow.
He becomes Basil's muse, inspiring Basil to create this portrait that Basil considers, his masterpiece.
So Basil is totally, enthralled by Dorian's beauty.
Yes.
And he captures it in this portrait.
Yeah.
But then there's another character who comes in and really shakes things up.
Yeah.
It's Lord Henry Wotton.
Lord Henry Wotton, this charming and cynical dandy, comes onto the scene, and he becomes fascinated by Dorian and starts to influence him with his hedonistic philosophy.
So pleasure and beauty are the ultimate goals.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm sensing Lord Henry's influence is not a positive one.
You could say that he fills Dorian's head with all these dangerous ideas about youth and beauty, makes him terrified of aging and losing his looks. And Dorian even says, I would give my soul for that portrait to change and I have to stay as I am.
Wow, those are pretty intense words. And of course, in true, Gothic fashion, that wish doesn't just disappear.
Right, his wish becomes this terrifying reality.
Oh, no.
Dorian remains young and handsome, but the portrait starts to age, reflecting the corruption of his soul as he indulges in this life of excess and sin.
Yeah, carefully guided.
Yes, very much so.
By Lord Henry.
By Lord Henry, yeah.
So the portrait becomes this representation of Dorian's...
Like a visual representation of his inner decay.
Yeah, decay.
Exactly. So Wilde uses this portrait as this symbol to really show how Dorian's actions, even though his physical appearance isn't changing, are warping his soul.
That's a creepy concept.
It is.
So Dorian's out there living this life of pleasure and all this debauchery, and his portrait's hidden away,
in the attic,
bearing the weight of his actions. So what happens next? Does he ever have to face any consequences?
This is where Sibyl Vane comes into the picture. Dorian becomes infatuated with her. She's this young actress who's performing in, kind of a shabby theater.
So he falls in love?
He thinks he's in love, but it's very shallow. It's more about the idea of her than who she actually is.
Interesting. And how does she feel about him?
She falls deeply in love with him. She believes their love is real. And it actually starts to affect her acting.
Real.
She even tells him, you have made me understand what love really is.
So I'm already sensing a conflict here. Her love is so pure and real.
Yes.
And Dorian's is...
superficial.
Yeah, more superficial.
Right. Sybil, now that she's truly in love, she can't pretend on stage anymore.
Wow.
Her performances suffer because they feel hollow compared to how she feels about Dorian.
And how does Dorian react to this?
He's furious.
What?
He accuses her of losing her talent.
Wow.
He even says, without your art, you are nothing.
That's harsh.
And so he rejects her.
Well,
and she is completely heartbroken and takes her own life.
So Sibyl's death is a direct consequence of Dorian's actions?
Very much so.
And his warped sense of love.
It's really a brutal turn of events.
Yeah.
How does Dorian deal with this?
I can't imagine he's consumed by guilt.
Well, instead of being consumed by guilt, he actually, under Lord Henry's influence, of course, rationalizes her death as this artistic sacrifice.
That doesn't feel bad at all.
No, he convinces himself that she achieved true artistry through this final act.
That's kind of chilling.
It's a chilling example of how corrupted he's become from Lord Henry's worldview.
So instead of facing the consequences, he just kind of doubles down.
He doubles down on his pursuit of pleasure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The portrait.
The portrait is hidden away, and it reflects all this growing darkness. It becomes increasingly hideous.
Wow.
Even though his outward beauty remains unchanged.
So 18 years pass, and Dorian just keeps on this...
downward spiral.
downward spiral, becoming more and more corrupt.
Yeah.
But how does he, like, function in society?
Well, rumors start to swirl about all these scandalous things he's doing.
Right.
But his beauty kind of acts as a shield, protecting him.
People are just blinded.
They're blinded by his appearance.
By his looks.
Yeah.
It's like...
appearances versus reality.
Yeah, appearances versus reality, yeah.
Exactly, and it's this duality that makes him such a fascinating character. He's both a victim and a villain.
Right.
Trapped in this cycle of sin and shielded from any accountability by the thing that he values the most.
Which is his beauty.
Exactly.
So we've got Dorian increasingly isolated, haunted by his past. What about Basil?
Well, Basil, after years of hearing these rumors and struggling with his own guilt over painting the portrait, decides to confront Dorian.
Oh, wow.
He goes to Dorian's house, hoping to appeal to whatever goodness might be left.
So Basil is horrified by what he's heard and tries to intervene to save Dorian.
Yes.
But does Dorian, like, come clean?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, no.
Dorian, in a fit of rage and paranoia, murders Basil.
He kills him. Oh, my goodness. So this adds another layer of darkness to his soul and further distorts that portrait.
So Basil, who saw so much potential in Dorian, becomes another victim.
Exactly. And it's such a pivotal moment because it shows just how far Dorian has fallen.
Yeah, he's crossed the line.
He's crossed the line. There's no going back.
So with another sin on his shoulders, how does Dorian cope?
He becomes even more isolated and paranoid, desperately trying to escape his past.
Yeah.
He seeks solace in these, opium dens, surrounding himself with these fleeting pleasures, but nothing can erase his sins.
You can't escape it.
No.
It's trapped.
And looking in the background is another figure.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Seeking justice.
James Vane.
James Vane. He's
But
out.
Jekyll's brother.
Right.
He's been this shadowy presence.
Right, the whole story.
This whole time.
This reminder of Dorian's past.
So does he finally catch up with Dorian?
He does.
Dorian tries to escape to his country estate, hoping to find some peace, but James is relentless.
Wow.
And so the confrontation happens when Dorian's hosting a bunch of guests at his country estate.
Okay.
He catches a glimpse of James peering through the window.
Oh, wow, that's got to be terrifying.
And fear grips him once again.
Yeah.
It's like this physical manifestation of his guilt staring him in the face.
So is this the final showdown?
Well,
does justice prevail?
It almost does.
Okay.
But fate, or maybe Wilde's irony, intervenes. During a hunting party on Dorian's estate, James is accidentally shot and killed.
Oh, wow. So he escapes, but I doubt that makes him feel any less guilty.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
While he's initially relieved, he realizes that James's death doesn't absolve him of anything.
Right.
It really solidifies his understanding that he's trapped in this cycle of destruction.
It's like he can't get away from it no matter what he does.
And this is where the story kind of takes a turn inward. It becomes less about these external threats and more about his internal struggle.
So James Vane's death marks a turning point for Dorian.
Exactly. He becomes obsessed with this idea of redemption, of finding a way to like atone for what he's done.
Okay.
He even tries to change his behavior.
Really?
Yeah, like he tries to live a more virtuous life.
So he's breaking free from Lord Henry and confronting the darkness.
Exactly.
Does this have any impact on the portrait, though?
Not really. Despite his attempts, he realizes that real change is really hard.
Right.
The portrait continues to reflect his corrupted soul.
Yeah, it's this reminder.
Yeah, a constant reminder.
He can't escape.
Exactly.
So what happens? Does he ever just confront the portrait?
He does.
Okay.
Driven by this desperate desire to erase the evidence of his sins, he decides to destroy it. He sees it as the key to freeing himself from the burden of his past.
After all these years of hiding?
Yeah. He decides to confront it head on.
It feels like this is the climax of the story. This is the climax.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
So he grabs a knife and he attacks the portrait.
Okay.
Hoping to just obliterate this image. That reflects his corrupted soul. So the scene is both really dramatic and symbolic. Instead of destroying the portrait, Dorian ends up destroying himself.
What?
His servants hear this commotion.
Okay.
And they rush into the attic. And they find this horrifying sight.
What do they see?
They find Dorian Gray
Yeah.
lying dead on the floor, but not as this beautiful young man.
Oh.
His body is withered and aged, bearing all the marks of his sinful life.
Wow.
It's like this physical manifestation of the corruption that was hidden for so long.
And the portrait.
The portrait has reverted to its original state.
It depicts Dorian as this beautiful, innocent young man.
So the image of perfection,
yes, frozen in time,
is preserved.
while his true self lies dead.
It's like Wilde is saying you can't escape who you are.
Exactly. It's a story about vanity and the corrosive nature of sin,
Right.
and that you can't escape your true self.
So Dorian's quest for eternal youth and beauty
Yeah.
leads to his own destruction.
Exactly.
He dies this withered old man.
A victim of his own vanity.
Yeah, and the portrait
The portrait remains
unchanged.
It's a tragic ending,
Yeah.
but also a thought-provoking one.
It really makes you think about what matters.
It does.
You know?
Yeah, is it superficial beauty or is it something deeper?
Right, something more meaningful.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From Dorian's wish to his descent into depravity to his tragic end.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways you think our listeners should consider from this?
I think it really reminds us that beauty is fleeting.
Yeah.
And that true worth comes from within. Our actions have consequences.
Right.
And trying to hide from who you are ultimately leads to destruction.
Yeah, it makes you really examine your own values.
It does.
What you prioritize in life.
Yeah. And remember that true beauty lies in things like integrity and compassion.
Well said.
Thank you.
It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking journey into the world of Dorian Gray. And it's definitely left me with a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Especially the idea that our own reflections can reveal so much about who we really are.
Powerful message.
Delightful, yeah.
That transcends time and continues to resonate with readers today.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the picture of Dorian Gray.
Thank you for having me.
And we hope you join us next time as we explore another fascinating topic.
Yeah, it makes you think, like, if Dorian had just looked, you know, beyond the surface, beyond his vanity.
Right. Could he have changed his fate?
That's the question that kind of haunts the whole story, right?
Yeah.
He was so fixated on how he looked that he never really confronted what was going on inside. He had these moments, you know, these chances where he could have chosen a different path.
Yeah.
But the allure of youth and beauty and, of course, Lord Henry.
Yeah, Lord Henry's influence.
Kept him trapped.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we all have that capacity for good and evil.
We do.
And ultimately, our choices are what shape us.
Yeah, and the picture of Dorian Gray is, it's a powerful warning about, you know, putting superficiality over substance.
Right.
Prioritizing pleasure over virtue.
It's a reminder that true beauty, true fulfillment comes from living a life of integrity and compassion.
It's also fascinating to think about the role of art in all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basil's portrait, I mean, he wanted to capture Dorian's beauty,
right?
But it ends up being this mirror to his soul, this visual representation of, you know, his moral decay.
Yeah, it's brilliant symbolism.
It is.
The portrait, at first, represents this youthful perfection, but then it becomes this reminder.
This haunting reminder.
The corrupting power of sin.
Yeah, and it raises all these questions about, you know, the responsibility of the artist and the relationship between art and morality.
Yeah.
And the fact that the truth, even when it's hidden, it has this power.
Yeah, it's a story that really stays with you.
It does.
It really makes you think.
Absolutely. The picture of Dorian Gray is a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
It really delves into the deepest parts of us, you know? It explores themes that are just as relevant today.
Right.
It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to confront that darkness we all have, and to really try to live a life that reflects our true selves.
Yeah, well said. This has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of Dorian Gray. This world of beauty and corruption, morality and desire.
Right.
And it reminds us that who we are is not about our appearance.
Exactly.
But about what's inside our soul.
And that pursuing those fleeting pleasures will never truly satisfy us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us for this exploration.
It was my pleasure.
Of Oscar Wilde's masterpiece.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you'll join us next time as we delve into another captivating topic, uncovering the hidden depths and the power of stories that continue to shape our world.